Welcome to Students Incorporated. I'm your host, Mr. Jason. Join me weekly as my students and I bring you content that's informative, positive, fun, and uplifting. This podcast is created and produced with the help of students from the International Community School of Bangkok. Hey everybody, Mr. Jason here. Today we are exploring a theme that I think every student and aspiring entrepreneur needs to hear: the power of legacy. Typically, when we discuss big business, we think of spreadsheets and sales. But today we're looking at the human side of leadership. We are joined by a guest who manages one of Thailand's most iconic exhibition empires, yet spends her heart and time giving smiles back to children who need them most. Joining me to lead this conversation are my co-host Esther and Pun. But before we jump into our first segment interview, let's hear our quote of the day and get some headline news.
Our quote of the day comes from none other than Winston Churchill. I think this quote perfectly matches our guest's life story. Winston Churchill once said, "We make a living by what we get, but we make a life by what we give." This quote really highlights the difference between material success and personal fulfillment. While we all work hard to build our careers and make a living, Churchill reminds us that the true meaning of our lives is found in how we contribute to others. It's a great reminder to look for our ways to use our own talents and platforms to make a positive impact, no matter how busy we get. I think this sets a perfect tone for the conversation we're about to have. And that's our quote of the day. Now on to some headline news for Bangkok.
Now, here's some headline news about upcoming expos coming to Bangkok. Our first event will be Money Expo Bangkok 2026. It will take place from May 7 to 10 at Impact Exhibition Convention Center. This expo brings together banks, insurance providers, and financial technology companies. This event will showcase new financial services, investment opportunities, and digital banking innovations, highlighting how technology continues to reshape the financial industry. Then, at the end of May, from May 26 to 30, is a trade show put on by Thaifex Anuka Asia, which has positioned itself as Asia's F&B powerhouse. This expo, that will be held at Impact Arena in Bangkok, is recognized as one of Asia's largest food and beverage trade exhibitions. The event will welcome thousands of exhibitors from around the world. The showcase will feature new food products, industry technologies, and culinary trends, reinforcing Thailand's role as a major hub for international food trade. And finally, our last headline takes us to the Bangkok International Trade and Exhibition Center, or better known as BITEC for short. BITEC will be hosting both the Thailand Franchise and Business Opportunities 2026 and the Asian Retail 2026 shows from June 4 to 7. These events bring together franchise brands, retail innovators, and investors from across the region. This joint event helps create new partnerships and highlights the rapid growth of Southeast Asia's retail and franchise sectors. And that is our headline event news for Bangkok for this episode.
Thank you for the quote and the headline news. For our first segment, we're honored to welcome Miss Jing to our studio today. She helps lead Union Pan Exhibitions, one of Thailand's premier consumer fair organizations, and she also serves as a Smile Ambassador for Operation Smile Thailand. I'll hand over the mic to Pun to get us started.
Welcome to the show, Kun Jing. We are so happy to have you. So to get us started, please introduce yourself to our listeners and tell us a little bit about the scope of your work.
Yes. Hi, I'm Jing. I'm Varangkana Jitsakdanont นะคะ I'm a board of director at Union Pan Exhibitions and also a Smile Ambassador for Operation Smile Thailand Foundations. And my company is a family owned. I'm a third generation. It's a well-known consumer fair exhibitions organizer in Thailand. I help Operation Smile for the past 10 years already. I think you guys will familiar with this foundations. It's It's provide the free surgery to repair cleft lift and cleft palate, as well as post-operative care, including speech pathologies and orthodontics. Now I have 2 children. First one is 7 years old now, and the second one is 3 years old.
That is such a massive responsibility you have to take care of. You are carrying on a huge legacy. What is it like really to be one of the leaders in your family's company, Union Pen Exhibition?
Being part of a family business is both an honor and a responsibility. Union Pen Exhibition has been part of Thailand exhibition industry for like over 4 decades. So there is a strong legacy to carry forward. For me, it's about respecting the foundations that previous generation built, while also bringing new ideas to help the company grow in changing world. I focus on strengthening in organization internally, especially in areas like human resource development, strategic planning, and modern marketing, so that the company can continue to grow sustainably with our client and partner.
Wow, that's very insightful. Let's move on to our next question. Like, thinking about that legacy, can you share a project or a specific moment you're most proud of in your career so far?
One of the moments I feel most proud of is helping refreshing the brand and organization structures. The company approached this year is the 46 years already. It's quite nearly like half a century. So we have to learn to adapt with the new things. We also work on the modernizing our internal system and repositioning the brand so that it remains relevant in today's digital era. Seeing the company evolve while maintaining the trust of long-term clients has been very meaningful to me.
It's inspiring to hear how those big moments shaped your career, and it's clear you stayed very grounded through it all. Thinking about your foundation, what values from your education or personal life guide the way you approach your work each day?
My study in local economic development and London School of Economic and Political Science taught me to think about how business can contribute to broader economies and community growth. So in my work, I always try to think beyond just the company itself. Exhibitions and fair are not only business platform, they also create opportunity for entrepreneurs, small business, and local industry to go. On a personal level, I value intricacies, responsibility, and empathy. This value guide how I work with colleagues, partner, and the community.
Wow, those values clearly act as a compass for your leadership. Well, since we're talking about, the way you work, let's now look at the industry itself. So, looking toward the horizon or the future, how do you see the role of exhibitions and fairs evolving in Thailand in the next few years?
I believe exhibition will continue to play an important role in Thailand's economy, but they will evolve to become more experience-driven and digitally integrated. Today, people are not just looking for product. They want meaningful interactions, networking opportunity and inspirations. Organizers therefore need to combine physical event with digital platform to create more engagement experience for both exhibition and visitors.
That sounds like a very exciting and busy future for the industry. With so much on your plate between innovation and tradition, I have to ask about the human side. How do you balance your professional responsibilities with your personal life and family?
Balancing work and family is always a learning process. For me, as a mother of 2 daughters, family is extremely important to me. I try to prioritize my time carefully and stay present in whatever role I am in. Whether at work or with my family, having a supportive family also help a lot. They remind me that success is not only about professional achievement, but also about building a meaningful life.
Wow, that sounds very meaningful. Well, since we already talked a bit about your experience leading Union Pen, let's shift gears now. We'd like to hear more about your experience with Operation Smile. So, what does your involvement with Operational Smile look like?
I have been involved with Operation Smile Thailand Foundation for more than 10 years as an ambassador. The foundation provides free surgery for children born with cleft lip and cleft palate, as well as post-operative care such as speech therapy. My role mainly focusing on fundraising, raising awareness and helping with fundraising effort so that more children can receive life-changing treatment.
That is such a life-changing work, and it's incredible to see that level of dedication. It makes me wonder about your daily or weekly routine. Can you describe what it is like balancing your time between leading Union Pan and working with Operation Smile at the same time?
For me, both roles are connected by a shared purpose, creating positive impact. My work in the exhibition industry helps supporting businesses and economic growth, while my involvement with Operation Smile allow me to contribute to society. Balancing two reminds me that success should also include giving back to the community.
Wow, thank you so much for this. Let's move on to our final question. We like to end by asking our guests for advice. So, what advice would you give to young people who want to start or grow their own business?
My advice would be to stay curious and never stop learning. The business world is constantly changing, so adaptability is very important for me, and I think it's for you also. It's also important to build strong values and surround yourself with the good people, mentor, partner, and a positive team. And most importantly, be patient. Building something meaningful takes time, but with dedications and resilience, it is definitely possible.
Wow, thank you so much for that good advice. It's for everybody, no matter their age or where they're at in life. It's good to stay curious, never stop learning, be adaptable, be patient, and building something meaningful takes time. It's been a privilege having you in the studio today, so thank you for showing us that high-level business and a big heart for humanity can and should go hand in hand. Your work with both Union Pan and Operation Smile is a true inspiration. We're going to take a quick break for our PSA announcement, and then when we return, we'll bring you part 4 of our serial story, The Mystery of St. Augustine. The plot is thickening, so don't go away. We'll be right back.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Did you know that every 3 minutes a child is born with a cleft lip or a cleft palate? In Thailand alone, around 2,000 babies are born with this condition every single year. For many of these children, breathing, eating, and even speaking can be a daily struggle. But there is hope. Operation Smile Thailand provides safe, life-changing surgeries and comprehensive care to underprivileged children across the country, completely free of charge. In as little as 45 minutes, one surgery can transform a child's future and give them a smile that can carry for a lifetime. You can be part of this mission, whether it's through a donation, volunteering, or simply spreading the word. Your support helps bridge the gap to essential health care. To learn more or to make a contribution, visit operationsmile.or.th or follow them on social media at Operation Smile Thailand. Give a smile, change a life. Now let's get back to the show. And we are back. For this segment, we will bring you part 4 of our 10-part adventure story titled The Mystery of St. Augustine. Before we jump into part 4, here's a brief recap of part 3.
Following the shocking theft at the Historical Society, the El Dorado team decide to pursue a secret lead of their own. Professor Amanda Chase revealed her 2 shipwreck theory, the possibility that Sir Francis Drake lost a second, undocumented ship carrying other materials and contents of great value. To test this theory, James Hawthorne arranged a private charter with local captain Bobby Mitchell, intending to scout the coastline under the guise of a simple historical tour. After finding an old buried box containing 24 16th century gold coins, the criminal network known as the Table shifts its focus. Chairs 3, 4, and 5 were dispatched to Jacksonville on a dual mission: to shadow their surrogate employer, Eleanor Bennett, and to infiltrate a university research lab. Using forged credentials, they aim to authenticate the stolen documents to ensure the red list treasure is truly within their reach. As both groups move towards their targets, the El Dorado team prepares to uncover a secret that's been guarded for centuries at the Cathedral Basilica. And now, without further ado, here's part 4, titled The Clues.
The sun was bright, and the midday heat was starting to rise. Even though summer had not yet arrived and the humidity was low, midday in St. Augustine could get warm, especially when there was no clouds in the sky, and this was one of those days. Tom Reynolds, feeling a little warm under his collar, walked into the small St. Augustine police headquarters and was happy to be in the air conditioning. He approached the check-in counter and mentioned that he had an appointment to see Lieutenant Daniel Walsh. After filling out a visitor's log and signing his name, he sat down in one of the orange bucket seats in the small waiting area. These are the kind of seats that come in pairs and are connected to each other. Tom was thankful he was the only one there.
Lieutenant Walsh opened a side door just next to the check-in counter, smiled at Tom, and then said, "Thanks for coming on such a short notice. Follow me." Lieutenant Walsh then motioned for Tom to follow him through the door and down a hallway.
As the two made their way down a short hallway, Tom replied, "I'm excited to hear what you have found." That was pretty quick.
Lieutenant Walsh opened one of the last doors in the hallway and motioned for Tom to have a seat at one of the chairs at the table. Lieutenant Walsh, with a straight face, then said, "Yeah, we have a few young tech-savvy officers here that helped us with this lead we are about to show you."
At the moment, Chief Sullivan stepped into the doorway from the hall and said, "Hey, Tom, I hope the lieutenant is helping you out. If you need anything else, please don't hesitate to ask. I heard about the break-in. Well, the so-called break-in. Sounds like a professional job. Our usual suspects don't fit the profile. Anyways, I think the lieutenant is onto something." He continues, "Anyways, I'm off to the courthouse for the afternoon. Walsh will fill me in later. Okay, take care." And with that, Chief Sullivan left.
Tom nodded his head as if to say thank you to the chief, and then looked up at Lieutenant Walsh and asked, "Okay, what do you have?"
Well, we have an old city ordinance in place that requires all commercial businesses to register the placement of CCTV cameras with the police department. Meaning, if a business is granted a business license within the city limits, and that business installs CCTV cameras on the exterior of their business or building, and if those cameras are pointing toward a public road or area, that business is required to inform the police department of that camera. Lieutenant Walsh paused for a moment and then asked, "Are you following this, Tom?"
"Yeah, okay, that makes sense," Tom replied. "I think I know where you're going with this, so please, go on."
I had one of my deputies look into our CCTV registration records, and she found a registered camera belonging to the business that sits across the street from your building. It's an old thrift shop business, but they do have an old camera that points in the direction of the Historical Society.
"I know which place you're talking about, but I've never seen any cameras on their storefront. In fact, I wasn't even sure they were still in business," Tom replied.
Well, thank you to our young deputy. She was able to find the owner, who, by the way, is as old as our town, and the owner was able to provide her access to the camera's recordings from the timeline you believe the documents were taken. Lieutenant Walsh continued, "Anyway, I wanted to play you the video we found and see if you recognize the individual who was recorded. It's not great quality, but it's at least something.
With his eyebrows raised in surprise, Tom replied, "Wow, that was fast. Sure, let's have a look, and make sure to thank your deputy for me." Tom watched as Lieutenant Walsh plugged a USB stick into a laptop that was already open and sitting on the table in front of them both. It took Lieutenant Walsh several clicks to find the file. Tom, along with Lieutenant Walsh, watched the slightly blurry video footage. The CCTV camera had recorded one person coming into frame, then turning and entering the alley behind the Historical Society's building. The camera then captured that same person leaving the alley and walking out of frame around 10 minutes later. The images were not very clear since the camera was old and the lens was dirty. And this happened at night. Tom looked up at Lieutenant Walsh and then said, "Well, that's something. That's more than what we had yesterday. I guess this video does confirm that we did have a break-in. I also don't recognize this person. It's too hard to see any type of detail, besides the fact that they're wearing dark clothes and a hat to cover their hair and face."
I thought you'd appreciate the video lead. We couldn't make out the identity of the person, but we thought we'd show it to you in case something stood out to you. Lieutenant Walsh responded.
"Can I see the video again in slow motion?" Tom asked.
"Yeah, no problem," Lieutenant Walsh said, and then played the video a few more times in slow motion.
Tom stood up halfway from his chair, pointing at the laptop screen, and then said, "Pause it right there. Can you see that?"
Lieutenant Walsh squinted his eyes and then responded, "Let me zoom in a bit. My eyes are getting bad with my age. If you know what I mean." Keaton continued, "Okay, I think I see what you're pointing at. There was a marking on the backside of the hat the individual was wearing. It was blurry, but the shape resembled what looked like the letter J."
"I can't tell for sure, but doesn't that look like the letter J?" Tom asked.
"It does," Lieutenant Walsh replied, "and the hat looks to be a baseball cap, and it looks more like a dark blue than black. I'm not a baseball fan, but what do you think, Tom? Do you recognize that?"
"No, but I know someone who will," he replied as he pulled out his phone and video called Cece.
Just as Cece was leaving her mother's house, her phone started vibrating in her back pocket. She stopped by her driver's side door, grabbed her phone and saw it was Tom, and clicked the green accept button. "Hey boss," she answered. "I was just about to head over to the old church to meet up with Mr. Hawthorne and his team. What's up?"
"Hey there. Thanks for picking up so quickly. I'm still at the police station with Lieutenant Walsh, who may have a lead on our stolen archives." Tom then continued, "I'm going to text you an image of what looks to be a baseball cap. There's a symbol or emblem on the back of the hat. It's quite small and a bit blurry. We think it looks like the letter J, but not sure. Anyways, I thought since you've been around baseball so much because of your brothers, and somewhat professionally around here, you might recognize it. If you could take a quick look and then text me back, that'd be great. Thanks." And with that, Tom ended the call.
Cece, knowing that Tom was focused on this one thing, didn't mind at all that he cut the call short without asking her anything else. She knew Tom could be like this, especially when he was stressed or focused. He was short and to the point. She opened the car door and then got in and sat there for a moment, waiting for Tom's text. Bing, there it was. She looked at the image Tom had sent, ran the image through one of her favorite camera filter apps, and enhanced the back of the hat to clear it up. She knew right away. This was the logo of the Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp minor league baseball team. Tom was right. The emblem did resemble the letter J. The image was blurry, but she was sure of it. She found a clean version of the logo online, took a screenshot of it, and sent a text right back to Tom with her reply. It read, "I'm pretty sure the emblem on the back of the baseball cap is of the Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp minor league baseball team. Here's a screenshot of the real logo I found online. If you put the two side by side, it's almost a perfect match."
Tom's phone dinged as Cece's incoming message appeared. Bingo. Tom said out loud as he held his phone up toward Lieutenant Walsh. Well, Lieutenant, I think that emblem on the back of the hat our thief is wearing belongs to the minor league baseball team, the Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp.
Lieutenant Walsh removed his glasses from his front shirt pocket and then put them on as he leaned over the table and squinted to see the small images on Tom's phone. He then stepped back and replied, I think you're right. That's good detective work, Tom. He then continued, we have a good lead on at least one article of clothing the thief was wearing, and it's very specific. I'll do some more digging with this new information, and if we find out anything else, I'll be in touch.
Tom stood up from the table, had a small smile on his face, and then replied, This detective work is exciting. I understand why you like it, Lieutenant. However, I've got to get back to the office and start coordinating schedules with the team here from California. They're out this afternoon doing some research with CC. Thanks again, Lieutenant. And with that, Tom left the police station and headed back to his office at the Historical Society.
Hawthorne parked on the street opposite the Basilica. He knew that Cece would be meeting them there shortly. As the El Dorado team got out of the rental, walked across the street, and stood next to the large front entrance doors, Hawthorne turned to Professor Amanda and asked, While we wait for Cece, what should we know about this place before we go inside?
Amanda looked over at Professor Hawthorne and then replied with a smile. Well, I'm glad you asked. I'll give you the quick version before we go inside. Amanda paused a moment to make sure Anne and Olivia were listening and then continued. Well, what we are standing in front of is not the actual first church building. The original church was much smaller and didn't survive the attack by Drake's men. Since the old Drake days, there have been different church buildings constructed and torn down on this location. The basilica here, the one we are looking at, was built in the 1790s. Since then, it's been officially recognized for a lot of things. Cece would be able to give those details. She continued, anyway, maybe it holds some secrets we don't know about.
At that moment, they all saw Cece on the sidewalk walking toward them. Hawthorne grinned, then said, hello, and then said, all right, we're glad we get a tour guide and are excited to see the inside of this place.
Cece grinned and said hello as she walked past them all and knocked heavily on the front large wooden doors. She then turned around and said, actually, John Tanner, a friend of the Historical Society and caretaker of this old relic, is going to be our tour guide. He knows this place like the back of his hand, and he knows all the history, even more so than I do. It's closed right now to tourists, but he'll let us in to see the place.
One of the front large wooden doors slowly opened with several squeaking noises, and John poked his head out to see who was banging on the front of the church's door so loudly. After recognizing Sissy, he opened the door wider and then said, "Oh, it's you," as he nodded his head towards Sissy. He then asked, "Who's with you?"
Cece introduced the El Dorado College team, Professor Hawthorne, and Professor Amanda and Olivia. After the brief introductions, Cece then asked John, I know it's short notice and visiting hours for this time of year are different, but would you mind giving us a quick tour of the church? I'd love for my colleagues to see the church and maybe get some of their questions answered.
John's face lit up, and then he replied, "Yeah, no problem, Cece. Any friend of the Historical Society is a friend of mine. And I haven't seen you here in a while. Anyway, come on in." John pushed on the large wooden doors open further and motioned for them all to enter the church. As the team was funneling through the half-open front door, John continued, "Not sure how much you know about this place, but here's a quick history lesson."
Amanda, now standing inside the back of the church with the others visibly excited, stared down the central aisle of the main seating area, interrupted John and said, "Okay, great. We'd love to hear the history of this place, especially the parts that haven't been published for the public."
John, surprised by Amanda's excitement, then said, "Okay, then this will be fun." John stood in front of the group with his back toward the front and started walking backward. He motioned the group to follow him up the main central aisle inside the nave, as he would give some history about the famous church. John continued with his history lesson. The official name of this National Historic Landmark is the Cathedral Basilica of St. Augustine, and it is the oldest Catholic church in the city and the oldest parish in the United States. It's still active today with regular services and other activities, and it's free to the public, I might add. John went on for about 10 more minutes about many of the features inside the main nave area. The stained glass, the different statues, and other symbolic relics and objects during the services. As he stopped at the front by the main altar and statues, John continued with a few more facts. Although the original parish here in St. Augustine began in the 1500s, the permanent cathedral wasn't built until 1790s. Several walls in the current structure we are standing in right now are from the original built back in the 1790s. Unfortunately, there was a fire in 1887 that destroyed many of the interior items at that time. However, a fellow by the name of Henry Flagler helped fund the restoration. So, the current cathedral building we are standing in is a combination of the original 1797 structure and the restored interior after the 1887 fire.
As John continued to talk about the basilica, pointing out other small details, Anne nudged James' arm and then whispered, "Look at the base of the middle wooden carving of Jesus behind the altar. It's a little hard to see because of the greenery they placed on the ledge. But what do you see?"
Hawthorne squinted his eyes and trained them on the base of the middle carved wooden statue of Jesus, which was elevated above and behind the main altar. Hawthorne could tell that there was a marking at the base of the carving, right below the feet of Jesus. As he studied it for a few seconds, it finally dawned on him what Anne had noticed. There was a marking in the wood that resembled a thin arrow that pointed down.
Anne, getting a little impatient, nudged James's arm again and asked, "Do you see it?"
"Yeah, I think so," he then replied with a louder whisper as he talked about the marking that looks like an arrow pointing down.
"Yep," she then asked. "What do you think that means?"
"Well, let's ask John. I'm sure he'd be glad to tell us." At this time, John had stopped talking about the history and had suggested the group could just roam around the main nave area, take photos, or simply rest and pray if they felt like it. Hawthorne had to admit the place was peaceful and quiet. James noticed that Amanda was walking around with Olivia and Cece, talking softly and looking at the different elements sitting around the interior. James walked over to John and then said, "Excuse me, do you mind if I ask you a question about one of the wooden carvings behind the altar?"
"No, not at all," John replied.
Hawthorne then said, "Anne noticed and then pointed out to me that there's a small carving of a directional arrow on the base of the middle statue, right below the feet of Jesus. The arrow is pointing down. What does that symbolize? I've done a lot of field work in Central and South America, and I've never seen a symbol like this before in an old Catholic church." By this time, Amanda, Olivia, and Cece had made their way back to where John, Anne, and the professor were standing, right in front of the altar and staring at the base of the statue.
"Okay, I'll tell you. This isn't public knowledge. Well, as at least part of it isn't. And since you are all here with Sissy and represents the St. Augustine Historical Society, I can let you in on a few inside secrets the caretakers, like me and others before me, have committed to preserve and protect." John then continues, "Yes, the etching is of an arrow pointing down. The arrow is pointing down at two things, the altar and the coquina vault beneath the floor." John hesitates for a minute and then says, "Tom at the Historical Society already knows a little about this, but there are a few other fun and interesting things he doesn't know about, and I'd be happy to show you if you're still interested. Maybe this will motivate Tom to get back over here and visit again."
Amanda, visually excited, then jumps in and says, "Yes, please. We'd love to see more. This is why we're here. Please go on."
"Okay," John replies. and then continues. After the fire of 1887 and the renovations were complete, Henry Flagler, who funded the restoration and renovation of the church, didn't want the caretakers to forget about these two things. First, the altar contains several sacred relics that were saved from the fire. Supposedly, the relics in the altar are linked to 3 saints and a Franciscan friar. I'm not sure what the relics are exactly because the altar is permanently sealed.
And the second thing, Amanda pressed.
Yes, John hesitates for a moment and then says, and the second thing is something I can show you. Follow me. John motioned for them to follow him as he stepped up on the elevated platform and walked behind the central altar. There was a small gap, about 4 feet, between the back of the large altar and the back of the church wall. The statue carving of Jesus was positioned and fastened to the wall, elevated about 5 feet off the floor level of the platform.
Okay, this is interesting, Professor Hawthorne said out loud as the group followed John Tanner onto the platform and then walked around the large altar. The group was fixated on what John was now pointing down at. The group watched as John rolled up a rug, which revealed a small door in the hardwood floor with a small lock and latch.
As John retrieved an old key from his inside chest pocket and unlocked the small lock, he said, "We don't show this to tourists, obviously, but this small space in the ground is from the original church building. It wasn't destroyed in the fire because it is partially located under the floor of the church. Anyway, this room is empty, as it sometimes fills up with several inches of water during a heavy storm. But there are several carvings in the coquina walls that you might enjoy looking at. They date back to the 16th century." John finished saying that as he lifted the heavy wooden door, rested it on the back wall, pulled a small flashlight out of his pocket, and then looked at the ground with a smile and added, "I hope you're not claustrophobic. Follow me." He then proceeded to descend into the dimly lit coquina vault.
Amanda watched as John ducked his head and then climbed down the old wooden steep staircase into the space below. Amanda followed John, careful not to misstep. Once down on the damp stone floor, she was happy she could stand completely upright, unlike John, who was taller and had to bend his head down a bit. Amanda guessed there was only about 6-foot head clearance, and the space looked to be a square room, maybe around 12 feet by 12 feet.
Hawthorne waited as all the others descended, then he was the last to go down into the vault. As he reached the bottom of the last step and then the floor, he felt the top of his head touching the ceiling of the short room. All right, he thought to himself, this is pretty cool. The room was small, smelled very damp, and with all 6 of them crammed inside, it did feel quite small and cramped. He noticed that John, who was closest to the backside wall, was pointing his flashlight at several what looked like carvings in the old coquina wall. The others had gathered around him, staring at the wall. Olivia pulled out her camera and then warned everyone that her flash was going to go off before taking several photos of the wall. Hawthorne then asked, "What are we looking at, John?" He could tell Amanda could barely hold her excitement in as she turned to look at Hawthorne as he asked that question.
John replied to Professor Hawthorne's question and said, "What we're looking at are carving from the original 16th century church buildings. Back then, it was thought that this room was above ground and a sacred chamber that held Catholic relics. Obviously, it can't be used all that today, but the carving here in the coquina wall have survived many hundreds of years."
"So, John," Amanda then asked, "are these carvings thought to tell some sort of story?"
"Yes," John replied. "That's pretty much how they documented some of the more important events back then. If the priests wanted something to be remembered, they would inscribe it on the walls. It's a simple way to pass down a story to the next generation." He then continued, "Feel free to take photos of the etchings, but out of respect for the Catholic parish, please don't publish them."
Hawthorne, looking at the 6 or so carvings and etchings in the wall, knew that Amanda had noticed the same thing he had. One in particular etching stood out to him, and Professor Hawthorne knew exactly what it meant, or so he thought. However, he knew John did not, and he assumed Cece didn't either. Only he and Amanda had been privy to the exact wording in the records Amanda had found in the old journal logbook back in the library at the college, and this etching is connected to it. He looked over at Amanda, raised his eyebrows, and then said out loud, "This is really something, John. Do you know what these mean?"
Not really, except that some of the etchings seem to highlight significant events back in the early days. Maybe something the priests were a part of or the town was a part of back then. I mean, there are no other records really that connect to the church other than this small original space and the etchings.
Amanda, not wanting to seem too excited, then said, "I'm just going to grab a few extra photos with my phone camera. Don't worry, we won't publish these anywhere." After that, John then led the group back up into the church, closed the heavy wooden door, locked it, and rolled the rug back over the door.
As the group walked down the main nave aisle again towards the main doors, John then asked, "Is there anything else you want to see while you're here?"
Amanda replied, "I think we are good. Thank you for hosting us. We really appreciate it. I'm not sure I've met a more knowledgeable parish caretaker. This place is in good hands with you here."
As the group made their way outside, they were all met with the bright, late afternoon Florida sun. Squinting his eyes, Hawthorne looked over at Cece and asked, "Hey, Cece, we booked a boat ride tomorrow morning with First Coast Charters. Maybe you and Tom could join us. What do you think?"
Actually, that sounds like a good idea. I can check in with Tom back at the office and then let you know, Cece replied.
"Okay, great. I'll send the details and we can just meet down at the harbor in the morning. We wanted to get out on the water for a few hours to get a sense of the landscape and what it might have been like for Drake and his ships to see the land from the water."
Makes sense, Cece replied. I know Tom was at the police station most of this afternoon, and I'm sure he'll enjoy a field trip tomorrow with you all. Bobby at First Coast Charters is great and super knowledgeable.
"That's good to know. We're going to head back to our hotel and call it a day. We'll agree to meet up tomorrow morning at First Coast office down at the harbor." "Oh, by the way, do you need a ride back to the office from here?" Hawthorne asked.
No thanks, I parked around the corner, Cece answered. See you tomorrow then.
Midnight looked at the small clock hanging on the living room wall of the condo and noticed it was just past 4 p.m. "Hey, which one of you is going to go to the post office to pick up the package?"
"I can go," Chair 3 answered. "What P.O. box am I accessing again?"
32, Midnight said with an annoyed look on her face. "Just get in, get the package, and get out. Don't talk to anyone, and mind your own business."
"Yeah, I know the routine," Chair 3 snatched back as he got up and walked toward the door to leave the condo.
Chair 6 then blurted out, "Wait, you need to conceal your face without looking too obvious. I'm sure there are cameras in the post office. Here." Chair 6 grabbed the dark blue baseball hat that was sitting on the table and tossed it at Chair 3 and then said, "Make sure you wear this."
Chair 3 caught the hat, looked at it, and then asked, "Interesting hat of choice. The jumbo shrimp? Really?"
Chair 6 responded, "Never mind the logo. Just make sure you come back with the package or you guys won't be able to get into the university's lab tomorrow." She continued, "And for the record, that's the only dark-colored hat I could find on such short notice before I hit up the Historical Society the other night."
Chair 3 tucked the hat under his left arm, opened the door, glanced back at the others, and then said, "Hey, 4 and 5, you owe me." And with that, he shut the condo door behind him and walked down the hallway toward the elevator.
And that's a wrap for this episode. A big thanks to our guest, Miss Jing of Union Pan and Operation Smile Thailand on segment 1 for showing us how to lead with both business smarts and a big heart. We've covered everything from international exhibitions to the latest twist in the mystery of St. Augustine. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe and leave us a review. And as always, this podcast would not be possible without the hard work and support of our international student production team.
All music and sound effects are courtesy of Pixabay.com. a vibrant community of creatives sharing copyright-free images, videos, and music.
And we are signing off until next time. We are Students Incorporated, because your voice matters.